So welcome everyone again to the DS Incubator. Today we start a new series about cloud computing. Can you hear a motorbike in the background? So the goal of this series is to help you get started with cloud computing. At the end of the series, we'll be able to do things like this, understand what it is and what the benefits might bring to an organization, to researchers, to developers, to interns. Also to create a server, I'm going to explain what that is, with the tools that you need to run RStudio, a version of it that is called RStudio Server on the cloud, to scale up and down your computing resources as you need them, to access shared data on the cloud, and to run long processes unattended. We may do a few more things, but these are the few things that I could come up with at this stage. So this DS Incubator is dedicated to pretty much anyone who might benefit from cloud computing. Maybe you don't still know if that's you, but that certainly includes an organization like 2 Degrees, researchers like ourselves, developers like some of us, and interns, students, for example, too. So this is important because cloud computing is gaining popularity, but not many of us use it, including myself. Only recently I started using it. And I think that the reason is because we don't know it well enough. We don't understand what it is and what we can do with it. So focusing on today's meetup, today we're going to be trying to cover quite a bit of ground. It's an introduction to cloud computing. And if you are here at 2 Degrees, you may already have heard a lot of what I'm going to be talking today. Basically, this is like a version of a dev hangout that we had before, just a little bit more complete, but sorry if you find this a little repetitive. So the objectives of today is to, most generally to understand what it is and what benefits it might bring. We're gonna create a server. So a server basically is a computer. We call it a server because it is a computer that we connect to from our computer. So in that case, there's 2 computers involved: the computer that we hold in our hands that we call a client, and the other computer that we call the server. So the server, the other computer, provides a service or serves something to our local computer. That's why the name is kind of confusing maybe, but think of a server just like a computer. And to make things even more confusing, different platforms, different cloud providers name their servers a different way. So I'm going to be showing DigitalOcean as one of the options that you have for cloud computing. And in DigitalOcean, they call servers a droplet. That's the name that they give to it. We are going to also explore the internals of the server that we create from a console. And the last meetup series was about working from the terminal. So I hope that will get you ready to understand the very few commands I'm going to be using today to explore the server. And then we are going to do something a little bit more close to our daily experience, which is to spin to run an instance of RStudio on that server computer. So that's all that I'm trying to cover today. As usual, the series is hosted at one repository. So the repository is 2 Degrees Investing /ds.cloud, and each meetup usually has a folder with a file in it that guides the meetup itself. So I'm gonna move this to the right and cover your faces, and I'm gonna do what do we want to do here? Actually, first let's start here again. So the first let's talk. Actually, I can still have your faces here because I have room for that. So first let's describe what cloud computing is. So cloud computing is the delivery of computing resources as a service. That means that the resources that we're going to be using, we do not own them, we just rent them. They're owned and managed by the cloud provider. That is kind of cool because sometimes it's boring to manage a computing resource. It's better someone else to manage it. By manage it, we mean maybe they need to install some software. Maybe the thing is not working well and they need to fix it. So that's something that we do not need to do. We rent the service and they figure it out, so that it's always what we expect as clients of the service. There is a bunch of different resources that you might rent from a cloud provider. It could be a bunch of things, like including a web-based application, like for example the Shiny app. It could be data storage, and Dropbox, for example, is something like that. So Dropbox uses the cloud, right, to store data, and we get access to it. So we are using the cloud if you are using Dropbox. Also, a more vanilla type of services, like we can rent just a computer, just a server that comes with very few things that we can then customize. And that's going to be mostly the focus of this meetup and the series in general. We're going to be working with DigitalOcean, which is one server provider, and DigitalOcean, as I said before, calls their servers a droplet. So we are going to use a droplet that's going to be running our studio server today. What are the benefits? Well, that kind of depends on which perspective you take. A bunch of players can benefit from cloud computing, including an organization as a whole. As an organization, we can save money by not buying super expensive computers, but instead just buying the computers that we need for day-to-day tasks, and instead renting powerful computers only when we need them. So if we do that, then we do not need to worry about, for example, computers getting old or breaking or losing value as time passes. As researchers, we can access the computing resources that we need when we need them. We don't have to wait for HR processes to approve the computers that we want to buy. We don't have to wait for shipping the computers to arrive, and all those things. And for some organizations, even installing software is a pain. But with cloud computing, it's very easy and safe to install software in the servers that we rent. As developers, it's very easy to get the specific tools that you need for the job at hand. Developers love to have special tools for some tasks, and it's great to be able to rent a computer that already comes with the tools that we want, as opposed to us having to set them up, because some of them are not so easy to set up. So I like a word that Alex used recently to describe this type of computers. So the cloud providers usually have different templates that fit different general purposes, and you can get a lot closer to what you need by getting access to these pseudo customized templates, and then you tweak them the way you want. And this final player that I could think of is a student or an intern, and they can benefit by basically getting very quick access to a functional computing environment that has everything that they need already installed, and including the data, for example, that we use privately within an organization. So you can think of private data for 2 degrees. We may put it in a server that all our members, all the 2 degrees people have access to. So the data is already there. You don't have to download it. You don't have to install anything. So now let's get to something a little bit more entertaining. Let's do a demo. And if you are not watching this live, hopefully you will land on this link. And if you click that link, that will give you a tour, an interactive tour through DigitalOcean that shows most of what I'm going to be showing today. So the demo now starts now. So let's click on a new web browser tab here, and let's type DigitalOcean. So if you don't have an account, you can sign up for one. I do have one, so I'm gonna just click login. The cloud provider that you choose is totally up to you. There is Google, there is Azure, there is Amazon. So I chose this one. I tried a few, and I kind of like this one. I think when you create an account for the first time, you're asked to create at least one project. So I prepare this project called demo for today. Usually the projects are basically a page where you can see all the resources that you have. This one is empty, for this demo. We start from scratch. And the very first thing you would do, so let me make this a little bigger for you to see better, that you could do is pay attention to that big green button in the middle that says create. So what we are about to do is to create a little computer that lives on the cloud. We are going to call that computer a server, but DigitalOcean calls it more specifically a droplet. So it's the very first item here because it is also the most popular product that they offer. Most people use that all the time. So that's what we're going to click. Respond. There you go. So now we're going to have a bunch of options. If you're trying DigitalOcean for the first time and you want to just play, I say you could scroll down all the way and just click create. but I'm gonna tweak things just a little bit to show you some of the flexibility that this has, and also as an opportunity to explain all the different things that you could do with your droplet. So the very first thing we do is to say, okay, which operative system we want. You know, in your case, you may have a computer with Mac installed, or with Windows installed, or Linux installed. Some of the Linux distributions are listed here. Linux comes in different flavors. Ubuntu is a very popular one. That's why it's first listed here. So if you click that, you're very good to go. Also, if you join the last meetup series, the one about the terminal, even if you didn't know, you were using Ubuntu a lot, and you may be already a little familiar with what it looks like, what the terminal looks like for an Ubuntu computer. It is also here where you can choose even more customized things. So this is very vanilla. That, you know, if we click on Ubuntu, that would give us a very kind of boring computer with nothing in it. But I say I would like to have Docker, because Docker is a tool that then allows me to try different kinds of software without altering the host computer. So this Ubuntu system could have Docker, which is a program that allows me to create mini computers inside this server computer. So I know that, you know, the levels of inception of which I'm talking about here are, you know, can blow your mind. But basically, we are now creating a computer that is not our computer. It's a computer on the cloud. And in that one, I would like to run a software that creates little computers inside that one, right? So it's many layers of abstraction and many layers of inception. So that's what I want. I'm gonna kind of explain why later on when I show what we can do with it. So I'm gonna click here on Marketplace. Marketplace is a place where you can find different flavors of templates, as Alex put it very nicely. So these are, for example, options that I have, and I want this one here. Basically, it is the same Ubuntu system that I could have clicked before, but on top of that, already I have installed Docker. Yes, I could create the droplet empty and then install Docker myself, but this particular droplet, if you look into the details, is maintained by DigitalOcean itself, meaning that they know what they're doing. You know, they are, you know, sure that they installed it following the guidelines that Docker provides. So I'm going to click that just to make sure that the Docker that lives in there is very well installed. And that's all I need to do. I'm going to scroll down and show you the options that you have for how powerful now your computer will be. You so far, you just decided which operative system it has and one program that will be running in it, which is Docker, but we haven't yet chosen how powerful our computer will be. And depending on what choices we make, we will be paying more or less for the resources that we rent. So I think that for the purposes of this demo and also for many real uses, the very basic one just does the job. So I'm gonna just keep it basic and the cheapest computer that I can rent, $5 a month. It's very fair. Keep scrolling down. I'm not gonna change anything here. Basically, you can choose to add more storage if you want. The computer that you're renting already has some storage, in this case 25 gigabytes. It's not a lot, it's very easy to fill and you may need more space, but not for now. This is just a demo. Also, you choose a region that is close to where you actually are physically located, and then you keep scrolling down to decide how you want to tell the system who you are. You can choose to authenticate with a password, or you can choose to authenticate with a more secure system that is called SSH keys. I'm gonna choose that one. I already have one SSH key. If you don't have one, you can click here on new SSH key. You can follow instructions here to create one. Also, RStudio has a really easy way to create one, and the book Happy Git with R, if you type SSH keys, will have instructions for you to do it on RStudio. Basically, you generate a string of text that you paste here, and then you are good to go. I'm gonna close this because I already did this. I'm gonna keep scrolling down. You could name your droplet something meaningful to you, like Docker demo or whatever. I'm gonna just leave it as is. The ugliness of the name will remind me that I need to delete it at the end, and then you just create the droplet. I'm gonna click here, and this is gonna take a little while, maybe a couple of minutes. You see this bar going to the right. So I'm going to go back to your faces, make a clarification and ask for questions. So the clarification I want to make is this. This series is going to show you processes like the one that I'm doing, like setting up, for example, the server, that is very much not everyone's fit. That's the kind of thing that I enjoy doing as a developer and as someone that wants to provide tools to someone else so that they can do their job. But that may not be you, and still you may be a great user of the cloud. You may want me to create a server for you with the tools that you want, and I'm very happy to do it, and then you just use it. So at this stage, this could seem like too intimidating in terms of all the setup that you need and all the things that you need to know to understand what's going on. But I would say just breathe and take it easy, because later you will see that as a vanilla user of the system, it's very easy. All you need to know is a username and a password, and you will be accessing a running instance of RStudio on the cloud. You are going to be a user of the cloud, but you don't need to know all the things that I'm showing here. But intentionally, I'm including this in this meetup because I know that some of us are interested in these technical details, so that you are empowered to basically run a cloud system yourself if you want to manage it. Let's see how the process is doing. Actually, this is completed, but still it's a good time to ask if there is any questions so far. Yes, Alex?
Yeah, I just want to quickly note, earlier you went over some of the advantages of doing stuff on the cloud. I just want to note some of the concerns.
Oh, great, yes.
And the two big ones are, the old adage is the cloud is just someone else's computer, right? Which is one of the big advantages. You have all of these nice properties, you don't have to worry about does it have good connectivity or does it have the right specifications, because you're literally just renting someone else's computer. But keep in mind that it is someone else's computer. So if you have any particularly sensitive data that you're working with, ask yourself, do I trust this system? And most cloud providers, doing security is their bread and butter, but ultimately it is you that is on the hook if there is a data leak, not them, right? So that is just a thing to keep in mind, is don't do stuff on the cloud that you wouldn't do on someone else's computer. The other one is Maro is showing us how to start up a computer on the cloud and how to create cloud resources. I'm hoping that there is time yet today, so I'm going to be quiet here, to show us how to turn off cloud resources. Almost every cloud provider bills by the hour, but I also remember years ago when I did my first experiments in the cloud, and I forgot to turn off this little, something similar, a little $5 a month machine, but I forgot to turn it off for 2 years, and I had a $120 bill because of it. So, especially if you're working with higher power machines, it is easy to rack up a bill if you forget to turn it off after you're done. So, those are my concerns. Things to keep in mind.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really cool comments to keep in mind. Yes, let's see if I can show actually the little turn on and off button right away. So far what we achieved is, remember that when I showed this project under resources, there was an empty space, and now we don't have an empty space. We have the name of the little computer that we created, listing the characteristics if we hover over it. So we are good to go with that thing. I can click on it to get some more details. And as you can see at the top, it says on, so the computer is on. So if you click here, you will turn it off, basically to shut it down, and then stop the charges. The next thing we want to do, so the computer for now is doing nothing really. So we want to explore it. So let's have a quick look at that computer by clicking here on the console. And yes, you know, if you are at this end of working with the cloud, like someone like me managing the service, yes, you will need some skills with the terminal. So I'm gonna click here in the console thing, and basically navigate this computer very quickly using some of the most basic commands to explore a computer from the terminal. And then I'm going to show you how you can access the same console from your own console, not the one that we... So basically, we access this console first going to DigitalOcean and logging in that service, and then clicking that link. But you can also connect to your droplet or to your server from your local terminal without actually going to DigitalOcean's website. So we are already here running our server. Before I start typing anything, I want to highlight one piece of this welcome message that is pretty useful. It is the one that tells us how we can actually connect without going to the website. It says you can SSH to this droplet in a terminal as root, doing the following: SSH root, which is the name of the user that we would be using to connect, and this weird number. This is a lot of jargon. It's packed of jargon. Basically, SSH is one program that will allow us to connect securely to that droplet using that key that we generated when we were creating the droplet. So the key is something that we have and only we have. It's private, or you shouldn't share with other people. But because we have it in our computer, then that SSH command uses it to access the service on the cloud. And this weird number, where does it come from? Okay, let's go back to the website. So every computer on the cloud has an address, like a virtual space in the internet where you can find that resource. And that address comes from here. So the very first thing to the left is that thing called IPv4. That number, that is the address that is stable, is the address that your resource will always have as long as it lives. So I'm going to copy that thing and I'm going to use it to follow the instructions that I saw on the message. So I'm going to open a terminal. This is a normal terminal in my computer. I'm going to type what I read in that message, which is SSH root, which is the name of the user with which I'm going to log into that service, and then at the address that I got from DigitalOcean. So I'm going to paste that there and hit enter. And now, because it's the first time that my SSH key is being used to connect to this droplet, I have to say yes here to save that SSH key as a known key. And now you can see that the message that I get is the same message that I got when I connected to my droplet from the website, right? So the rest of the information is not important, at least not for now. So I'm going to do a Control-L to clear things up. And I'm just going to play a little bit with this server to explore what we have here. So the first thing I'm going to do is to see who am I, and I expect to get root because I logged in as a user root. That makes sense. I could do a print working directory, pwd. I'm going to make this a little bigger. And I expect to be at the home directory because this tilde here suggests that. I could do an ls to see what I have in the home directory. It's just a folder. I could do an ls -a to explore the hidden files and directories. I could do an ls at the root of the system to see what other folders there are. And if you have been using Ubuntu, what you see now on the screen is basically what any other Ubuntu system looks like. So, so far, so good. But that's not all. Remember that we created this computer with Docker. So the first thing I'm going to do now is to confirm that I do have Docker installed. So I'm going to do Docker, and I'm going to type run, and I'm going to run an image that is well used, commonly used to test that Docker is working well. And it is an image called hello world. So that is an image that Docker will search for in my system, and if it doesn't find it, it will go to a place called Docker Hub. I will pull it from there and then run that image. An image is like a template for a little computer. It runs that computer and printed this message, "Hello from Docker." This, basically this confirms that my installation of Docker is working, correctly, which I expected because I used a droplet that was configured by DigitalOcean, and I'm hoping that they did a good job there. More interestingly, and about to finish, we could run something more useful that allows us to use, for example, RStudio. So where that, let me show you instructions to do that. So I'm going to be using one provider of Docker images, that is the Rocker project. They are very awesome, and they have a bunch of very useful little computers that allow you to do things like running RStudio. So in their homepage, they already have this string of text, which is the instructions to run basically RStudio on a server, and that's exactly what we're going to copy and paste here, just to prove that our system is working fine and it can run RStudio. So the goal is that in a few moments, when this is complete, we are going to be able to work with RStudio in a very, very similar way in which we work with RStudio locally. There are a few things that we will kind of learn in other meetups, because we don't have time today, that we may need to learn to use that different type of RStudio. Like, for example, getting in and out data from that instance of RStudio is not probably as straightforward as it is in your computer, but it's not also hard to learn. So in the meantime, let me go back to this screen. So how we connect to that RStudio? Well, we don't need to have RStudio installed in our computer. So you can have a computer that has no R and no RStudio and still use RStudio through this cloud server that we created. And the way you do it is going to an address on your web browser. So if this was your local machine, you would be using a nickname for that address that I showed you before. It's called localhost in this case, but this is not the case. So we are not working from our local machine. So instead we need the address that we get from here. So we copy that address and we go to that address, and then we type column and always 8787. So that is basically following the instructions that we see in the Rocker project, but tweaking this very first bit to change localhost for the actual address of the server on the cloud. So let me confirm if the computer is already running. It is. So the process that I asked that Docker container to do is already running. So that means that I hope that if I go to that address that I type here, I should be able to log in to RStudio. And here we are. So this is starting now. This would be your experience if you are not interested in managing a cloud service, but only in using a cloud service. So you would ask someone like me to create that service for you, and then you would come here and type a username, in this case RStudio, and a password, in this case the one that our project set up, which is your password. Very not safe, so we could give you a better password for a real use case. So we click sign in. I'm not going to save this password because obviously I'm not interested in this beyond the demo. And what is about to happen is that we see RStudio almost identical to the one that you experience in your local machine. All right, that's all we have time for today, but we may have, we are over time, but we still have, it's important to have some time for questions or comments if you have them. All right, thanks Alex for your comments before. Yes, some downsides have to be considered. Here today, to wrap up, we learned what the cloud is, what benefits it might bring. Alex helped me remind of some downsides of it. and we quickly created a server on the cloud. A server is just a computer that connects to our computer, so we get some kind of service. And one of the services that I was interested in getting was access to our studio from the web browser. So what I did is, instead of choosing a vanilla server, I chose one that already comes pre-installed with a tool called Docker that allows me to create little computers inside that server. And by doing so, then I use a Docker image, a little computer that is pre-made by a project called Rocker that gives me RStudio from the web browser. Yes, I could have used a vanilla droplet, a vanilla server on the DigitalOcean and install a Docker server myself, but I didn't want to spend that time and effort, and instead I just used a Docker image to do that. All right, that's all for now. So thanks very much for hanging in. Next time we're going to be talking more about computing on the cloud. Ciao, ciao.